New inventions. Every year there are new inventions. Not only every year, but almost every month. We are almost 8 billion people around the world, and we are all connected with each other. And each country, when they produce something new, they just share it with all the rest. So there is a total of trillions and trillions of dollars or euros around the world, and a good part of them is spent on research and development and inventing things useful to society, to the world. Are you more a consumer or a producer? I'm more a producer. I have always been more a producer than a consumer. I have been producing my own jobs, inventing things, doing things, even the use of YouTube and Facebook, producing things for people instead of consuming. I'm also a consumer, of course. I watch a lot of them, of the videos, but I also would like to be a producer. 99.99% of the population are consumers. They just consume things. And there is a very small part of the society which produces. I have produced my own foundation. I have produced jobs for people and food and clothing, produced things. I'm producing those videos, not as much as I'd like to. I'd like to produce 2, 3, 4, 5 videos a day, but I'm only producing very few videos a month. And since that YouTube came into being, in 2006, 2007, I immediately took the opportunity to post things, information, etc., for people to learn. And I also proposed it to other people. Why don't you share your own information, your own things to people you could be useful to society? I proposed it to my father in 2007. He had many things, important things to say to the world, to society, things regarding theology, archaeology, history, but he did not grasp the new invention of YouTube, of sharing your thought and leaving a legacy to the world, a testament to the world, a cultural testament. I grasped the idea immediately. And 99.99% of the people don't grasp this opportunity. They just live their life and then they die, and they leave a testament for their families and relatives. They don't leave anything useful to the society as a whole. Some of the people produce big books or articles, and they sell books, and this is very good. It's a good idea, but it's very limited to the place where you are living. While now we have the internet, so people are starting to understand the concept, and they are starting to leave their heritage, their legacy to the world. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe everything will be preserved for centuries and centuries ahead if the Lord doesn't come back before. And maybe something you have shared will become very important in 100 or 200 years from now, will become vital to the people living in the future generations, and it will be very useful for them. We never know. God knows everything. So I shared in my last 2 videos in Italian and English the concept of creativity, of being creative. And I brought the argument in relation to the humanistic side. So regarding philosophy, religion, spirituality, and generally intellectual concepts. And I pointed out the importance of being creative also in that segment, in the segment of humanities. But now I would like to share creativity in the empirical world, in the scientific world, because this is also important. And it is important to know also that the most scientific people in history, they shared their science starting from a mystical point, starting to be as a mystic, like Descartes and like many others. They all had a vision which was non-scientific, and then it became scientific afterwards in the following steps, and then they produced something useful for the society. So what I'm going to share now are some things that are already happening in the world, and I will be adding things which is made up from me. It's totally made up, invented, and it is futuristic. It's like a vision, a mystical vision of what it might be also. One of the things I'd like to start are the drones. I shared in another video the mini drones, very small drones. They are already talking about it, and they are already producing them. What I wanted to add, and this is made up from my mind, I didn't read it or seen it, but I think it might be possible that someone is already talking about it or even maybe producing it, and that is micro drones produced by nanotechnology, very, very small drones that can fly around to detect, spy and control and do many more things. Nanotechnology can produce wonders. And I think that scientists have found out that the drones produced by humans are not as perfect as the insects. You can see the insect, the fly or the mosquito, the way they fly is incredible. They can move right and left and up and down in less than a fraction of a second. And any drone cannot do that. So I think that the future will be that human beings will be producing micro drones, nanotechnology drones, very, very small as insects. And I actually have seen some programs producing like small mosquitoes or insects, but not as small as the real mosquito, a little bit bigger. I think that they will be producing them in the future as small as the real fly, the real mosquito, and it will be carrying a webcam and microphone and also a serum, something to inject, like to make people sleep or whatever, and the webcam or the microphone will be able to see and to listen everything. They will be able to enter any place from under the door, from between the windows. I think they haven't produced them yet. I'm just inventing it from my mind. Science fiction. As I wrote in the introduction on my YouTube, that I'm a science fiction storyteller, and this is like a guarantee for myself to say whatever I want to say, so nobody can say anything because I'm already announcing myself as a science fiction. But in reality we know that even Mark Twain wrote that reality is stranger than fiction. So whatever I say and invent in reality will be in the future even worse and even more unbelievable. You will be asking, so how do those flies or mosquito little drones be moving? But how? By high powered batteries, very light batteries. It will be the ultimate generation of batteries, very, very light. And they could be also solar batteries, very light and powerful solar batteries. And this is made up from my mind, because I think that scientifically is not possible yet. But what is possible, I have seen it on a video, is that they could be producing those very small micro drones or insect drones powered by a laser. So a laser beam, a very powerful and highly diffused, so diffused on a large area. So the mini drone will be in that area, will be capturing the laser. I don't know scientifically how. It will be capturing the power and moving according to that laser. And the laser will be able to enter through the walls and through the windows. It will be harmless to human beings and animals and any living being. This is not made up from my mind, but actually I read it. I read about those laser beams that will be powering those micro drones. So some things are invented by me, and some things I have read in books or articles or seen in the internet. So imagine there is a crisis in a city and people are inside a building and they are threatened, and you are able to send those very small flies and mosquitoes to see inside the room what is happening, and you can even inject some people with some sleeping things or whatever. The injecting part, this is an invention from my own mind. So again, it's a mixture. Also, normal drones to control the city. I think in the future, and this is also from my mind, that the cities of the world will officially have a small airport in every building of the world as a small airport drone for drones, and the drone through the webcam will be able to land on their airport on any building around the world and just automatically recharge itself from the electricity of the condominium or whatever, and then start again and go again. And every drone will have like a radar, so they don't collide with other drones. Will be a technological system, so there will be no collisions between them. And those government drones will be controlling the city and the traffic and the people, just like the satellites from very, very high. They can control, and they do control nicely, but the drones will be controlling very, very precisely. They will be able to see exactly what's happening up to the millimeter. And it will be very useful for surveilling power plants and different plants of security of importance to the population. The control on power plants will be more and more heavy, because if anything happens to any power plant, will plunge us back into the Middle Ages. Taking off electricity to a city for a long period of time is even worse than nuking it. Because nuking it, they all die together at the same time. While taking off the electricity, they die a little bit at a time. People dying out of fear, out of killings, out of crimes, out of desperation, out of hunger, out of heart attacks, out of becoming mad. So it's much worse to die in that way. Solar panels during the New World Order will be compulsory in every building of the world. And this is an invention from my own mind. Imagine every roof of every building of every construction having compulsory, mandatory from the government, from the New World Order government based in the headquarters in Rome, as the Bible says. They will give this order that every building must have on its top, on its roof, solar panels of every size, small, micro size, medium size, big size, extra big size. And the other thing invented from my mind is that those solar panels on the roof will be high powered. Let's say that now a 10-foot solar panel produces for a small flat, a small apartment, produces electricity enough for a small apartment. In the future, God willing, maybe, I think, I envision that those solar panels, a 10-foot solar panel, will be sufficient not only for one apartment, for one flat, small flat, but it will be sufficient for 100 flats. 10 foot for 100 flats, for 1,000 flats, for a whole building. So technology will go ahead in an incredible way. And the system will be that whatever will be used for the building in the solar panel will be for the inhabitants, and whatever is extra will be stored in special batteries and sent to the government, which can use it for other purposes. So in other words, I think that I can see that we will have so much power around the world that it will be totally free to the population. So electricity will be totally free for the whole population. And it will be coming from the sun. There will be no need anymore to produce any other sort of energy to make our things go ahead. Mother Nature has produced everything we need. God has produced for us everything we need, and He gave us a beautiful mind that we can resolve our problems. So imagine a 10-foot panel can produce now, for example, for a small apartment. In the future, the same 10-foot panel with special technology will be producing not for one apartment, for 100 apartment, 1,000 apartment. What I mean by 100, 1,000, I mean much, much more than now. They will be much more efficient. And I can feel that the free energy for the whole world will be not in a very, very distant future, not in 100 or 200 years from now. I think it will be less, maybe 50 years from now, or less than 100 years from now. Of course, maybe I will not be here to check it out, but who cares? This is what I feel, this is what I can envisage. So imagine also the drones I just mentioned before, and the mosquitoes or the flies having those tiny and micro panels on them, just working all the time free, having unlimited autonomy. There will be no need anymore for drones to have airports on the buildings, have docks. It will be a need only for a certain period. And then when those type of batteries will be invented, very light and very powerful, will just cancel all the docks, cancel all the little drone airports on the roof of every building. Will be cancelled, will be no use anymore to have them, because the drones will be just going ahead in an infinite way and producing useful things for the global community. Next invention is clean meat. Not the meat we are eating now, but 100% clean meat. And this is not from my own invention. This is what I read in some books and articles, and I also saw in the internet. It is well known in the scientific community that the cleanest meats we are eating are not really very clean. When analyzing any sort of meat on the microscope, they always find that they contain fecal elements, feces, very, very, very small quantities of feces inside the meat we are eating, due to transportation, due to handling, due to many reasons, like environment reasons and putting them from one side to another, etc. Pathogens stay around the meat and they produce those fecal elements. Of course, when we cook the meat or boil it or grill it or whatever, all those pathogens and bacteria, they die, they are burnt, so that's why we also don't die. But sometimes, and quite often, people like to eat raw meat, so meat which is not cooked, like salame, mortadella, prosciutto, especially in Italy. And not only in Italy, even in Japan, they like the sushi food, etc., or raw meats, raw fish, etc. And many other countries, they eat some types of meats that are not cooked. And they all contain intestinal pathogens and bacteria from the flora. They contain spores that can produce more bacteria. This is what I have read and found out. But now the news is, and it's good news also for vegetarians who do not want to eat meats because they want to be kind to animals, and also people who are following a vegan system, vegan, There is now a clean and ethical meat, which can be produced without killing any animal. Just taking a few samples of cells from any animal, it can be produced many more cells. And even the most sensitive animalistic people who say, no, no, we don't want you to touch animals to take their cells. It's cruelty. It's not cruelty at all, because those cells can be taken right from the mouth, from the floor of the mouth. Just putting a little spoon on their mouth and brushing, just very slightly brushing from their mouth, just a few cells, and there you have. Like when the doctor opens the mouth of the child with a spoon, open your mouth, so I want to see your, and then they push the tongue with the spoon. It's the same thing, just pushing the tongue or the mouth of the animal, just taking a few cells and then producing meat out of it. They have already produced hamburgers from cows, and the first hamburger cost a lot of money, around $300, I think, for one hamburger only. And then it started going down and down and down. That was a few years ago. And now it costs, in 2018, it costs around $11 for one hamburger. So it's a quantum jump from $300 to $11, unbelievably low. And they think that it's quite difficult to get it even cheaper, because to open it to the general public, it must cost around half a dollar, so the people can sell it for $1, for example. And it's quite difficult to get it under $10. But some people say, I read some articles, that within a couple of years it will be possible. So maybe in 2020 or 2021, we will find real hamburgers, real meat, clean meat from real cows without any cruelty to animals, and they will cost $1, just like the normal hamburger now. And this news was very exciting for many people, vegetarians and vegans, and I spoke to a couple of vegans and vegetarians, and they said, wow, if it's really true that it's harmless to animals and it's cruelty free, then I will be happy to eat all the meat which is necessary for the body. But they believe, of course, that the body doesn't need any meat, which I believe the body does need some meat. Next invention, I have seen a program. It says that in Moscow, the institute, which is equivalent to the MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, there is an equivalent in Moscow. They are already working on a sophisticated time machine, and they have invented something called electron qubits. I don't know exactly what they are, but they say it is the equivalent of the zeros and of the one, and they are fiddling with all those things. So the Russians are very interested in the time machine, and it is said that they have succeeded in producing something that brings something which is in an entropy stage into the back stage, so to take the time back. Entropy means that is falling down, passing from order to confusion, to disorder. So in Moscow they have found a way to make the reverse system, not from order to disorder, but to work on the disorder and take it back to the order, take it back to the origin. So now the Germans, the Americans and Japanese and Europeans in general, they are very interested in what's happening in Moscow. And there is this Professor Leskvik. He's responsible of changing the patterns of this system. and they are all interested and in contact with him, and something is boiling. They are still in the initial stages, so nothing is yet newsworthy. It's not yet in the news, but something big might be coming out in the next decade or two. And in this program, scientific program, they said that it might be possible at this stage to go backwards in time. I don't know how they would do it, but they can produce an environment, a closed environment, scientific environment, where in some way they can go back in time. It all sounds like science fiction, but in reality there are millions and millions of dollars and euros spent, and governments are opening their eyes and their ears. So while we are saying, it's only science fiction, people with PhDs are talking about it. So that's it for today. And by the way, I just remembered that I saw and I read an article about DARPA. It's a government agency. They are willing to give millions of dollars to any company who will be able to map the central intelligence nervous system of the insects. Map it and chip it. And you will be asking why. And there is a double reason for it. The first reason is connected to what I was saying before, is to see how the insects move while flying. They can change direction 100 times in a few seconds, which is a miracle from God. They can do it to avoid the enemy, to avoid to be killed. So this government agency, they want to know how the nervous system is working, because they want to copy it to those drones I was talking before, those very small insect drones like flies and mosquitoes, etc. So if they know the mapping, they can produce exactly the same map through nanotechnology to produce those very small machines. And they will not be used as a war machine, because there will be a world order. They will be used only to control the population, control the rebels, and make sure that the world will be living in peace and in order. And the second reason is that within the agency there are a group of people who are also studying a philosophical point of view. Very strange for a materialistic agency, but this is what it is said. So they are studying, in other words, the consciousness and the cognition of those insects, because it is believed, as we all know and as I believe, that even the insects are sentient, and they have a consciousness. So they are conscious of the environment, what's happening around them. I have small insects in my house, like small spiders and small type of flies, etc. I don't kill them, I don't touch them. And when they pass in front of me, it moves my feelings, because they are just sentient beings. They have consciousness, and they can see a huge cloud, which is myself. They cannot even recognize me. They can just see this cloud going and coming, and they are living their own world. So they mustn't be touched or killed. Unless, of course, there is a real threat on my life, on my health, then yes. But there is no real threat with those little creatures. So they want to map the nervous system, because they want to find out about their consciousness and about their cognition system. What that is exactly, I don't know. This is what I read. So God bless you. And let's never forget that even the Word of God says that all the creation gives glory to the Lord. In the Psalms and the Proverbs, it talks about birds, about animals, about every sort of creature. They look towards God, even if they don't believe in God, or we think they don't believe in God, we think they don't know about God. the scripture teaches us that all creation has their eyes, their feeling towards the Creator. So everything which was created is for the glory of God. May the glory be to Him forever and ever.